Hi everybody, and a very happy new year to all of you. And to kick things off in 2024, I thought I'd do my customary practice themed video. It's the time of year that thoughts turn to what you'd like to achieve as a guitar player in the coming year, the kind of things you want to be working on, and where you'd like to end up in 12 months' time. I think one of the biggest problems with practice is it can just be so overwhelming, and there are so many things to potentially be working on, so little time. And one bit of advice that I always give to those of you with limited practice time is to prioritise working on actual music rather than exercises, technique, scales and theory. And all of that stuff is of course worth working on, but never at the expense of actual music. And the great thing is, if you're working on the right kind of music, then you're working on all of those other things anyway. You just kind of absorb it through studying great music. So the idea here, say for example you want to work on your picking speed, is simply to find a great piece of music by one of your favourite players that involves fast picking and make that the focus rather than learning a bunch of unmusical exercises. So with that concept in mind, I've got 10 riffs or musical examples for you which you can use to target particular techniques or to learn particular musical concepts, and you might like to add some of these to your 2024 practice routine. Now these riffs reflect my own personal musical tastes. Do let me know if you've got any further suggestions, if you've got any go-to riffs that you like to use to work on particular techniques. Do let me know in the comments, yeah, let's just get started, shall we? 10 riffs, let's go. So this riff, played by the great McGeoch, one of my favourite guitar players of all time, and not only is it a fantastic riff from a fantastic song, it's also a really excellent picking exercise. So if you want to work on your arpeggio picking and your accuracy when you're holding down a chord, just picking out individual notes, skipping between strings, I really couldn't have come up with a better exercise than this particular riff. And it's actually quite challenging to play up to speed with this kind of accuracy that McGeoch plays it. So it's all based on a D minor 7 chord shape. So this one here, starting with the root note 5th fret on the 5th string, you've got fret 5, 3, 5, 3 and 3 on top as well towards the end of the riff, and we're setting up this kind of picking pattern. So just bouncing off of that root note really, we keep coming back to the 5th string, but then we're going through the other strings as well. Then we're going to this shape, which is an open 4th string, then a D an octave higher and an open top string, a similar kind of picking pattern, just bouncing off of that D note. And then this shape, and we've got a B now in the bass, and we've got this D and an F on top. Then we're climbing up the 5th string and into that D minor 7 shape. We actually got the G on top there, so it's kind of a D minor 11 sound. As I say, quite challenging to play that up to speed, so this is something that you can work on over time, starting really slowly. You might like to use a metronome as well and gradually work it up to the kind of speed that McGeoch does it on the actual recording. So that's Spellbound. With this riff and with several of the others that I'm going to look at, I have actually done full song lessons elsewhere on my YouTube channel, so I will link to those on screen if you want a bit more detail on some of these riffs, or if you want to learn how to play the entire track. Say for example you're more of a beginner, and I recommend getting the fundamentals together, so your open chords, your bar chords, and working on playing solid rhythm guitar. So you could do a lot worse than learning a few Ramones songs. It's kind of got lots of great rhythm guitar vocabulary, really good practice with those basic bar chord shapes, and actually more challenging than you might think to play some of those tunes up to tempo with those really fast downstrokes. So you might like to try learning the Blitzkrieg bop riff, which goes like this. Nice Nice simple basic bar chords here, 1, 4, 5 in the key of A. We just got an A major bar chord going to a D, which is in the A form shape, up 2 frets, and you've got an E, and just playing it with really fast downstrokes here. So again, you might like to start off slowly, gradually build up your speed and stamina in your picking hand, and just focus on getting a really solid groove. You might like to play along with a metronome, eventually working your speed up so you're able to play along with the actual record. Another important technique to have down is accurate and relaxed strumming, particularly at higher tempos. So here a good song to work on might be Big Mouth Strikes Again by the Smiths, which the main riff of which goes like this. So this one has a very fast 16th note strumming feel. It's another riff that's quite challenging to play up to the tempo of the original recording. So the usual advice applies: start slowly, concentrate on staying relaxed, playing accurately, maybe use a metronome till you're able to work up to the actual speed of the recording. So this one is in the key of A minor. There's actually a capo on at the 4th fret, but it's based on an A minor chord shape. That's going to a C chord shape with this high 3rd fret note on top, and then we're just sliding that shape up 2 frets, back to the A minor, and the second time round we're going to an F, and then F major 7, so I'm just lifting up my first finger to allow the top string to ring. And then finally we're going to a G, or kind of a G power chord, and then down to the 1st fret, and then the open 2nd string. So it's another great song, great riff that also serves as a really excellent exercise to add to your practice routine. Next up is a riff by James Burton, one of my favourite country guitar players. And this one is a great riff to work on if you want to improve your pick and finger technique, your hybrid picking. And the riff goes like this. Love this riff, and this is another one where I have done a full video on it, so if you want a bit more detail on this riff, then do check that out. But the basic idea here is we're basing the riff around an E chord shape. We're setting up a steady bass note which is played with the pick, and then with the fingers of your picking hand we're playing this little bluesy kind of melody. Trick is, of course, to get those two things happening together. So generally with hybrid picking, I'm using the middle finger of my picking hand. With this particular riff, you could use your ring finger as well. That's up to you. And as usual, the best thing to do, particularly if you've not done any hybrid picking before, is to start very slowly, gradually build up speed. Just concentrate on getting it right and getting everything synchronized and coordinated. Say you want to work on your picking speed when playing single notes. This is another really important thing to be able to do, even if you don't want to be a shredder. So if you want to do that, then find a solo or a piece of music which has got some really nice fast picking in it. So it might well be a rock or a metal thing if that's your bag. For me, it might be a country thing. So perhaps a solo played by Nichols on Working Man Blues. I've done a full video on this solo. It's got some fantastic country playing in it and some really kind of shredding country chops as well. There's one lick in particular which I really like, which serves as a great picking exercise. So it goes something like this, if I can remember it. We've got so quite hard to get that up to speed. But you see what I mean? How it's musical and it sounds great, but it's also quite challenging to play. So just a little portion of that might be something to work on for 10 or 15 minutes in a practice session. So this bit here, great alternate picking exercise. We've got a chromatic run of notes on the 3rd string, going over to this E flat. And you've got a string skip in there as well, which is something that's quite challenging to do with your picking hand. So that might be the exercise. I'm playing that with strict alternate picking. So down, up, down, up, down, up, and then it repeats. So get the metronome out, start slowly, and gradually work up to a kind of shredding kind of speed. That's probably the top speed that I can play. I'm sure some of you can play that kind of thing faster, but I'm not particularly a shredder. Another essential rhythm guitar technique would be accurate and groovy funk strumming based on a 16th note groove. So rather than work on boring exercises with a metronome, why not learn a classic funky track? And the one I've gone for here is a real classic. It's Good Times by Chic, played of course by Nile Rodgers, and the basic riff goes something like this. Funk riffs don't come much more classic than this one. It's based on a 4-chord progression. We've got an E minor 7 to start with, setting up that funky 16th note strum. The key thing here is just to stay as relaxed as possible, and the strumming motion, for me it's coming from the forearm, it's coming from the wrist, it's sort of everything is working together here. So I'm taking that E minor 7, then I'm putting down my pinky to create an E7 sus4, and the fretting hand is playing an important role here as well with the muting. So I'm just releasing pressure to create those muted strums and the gaps in between the chords. I'm coming down here to an A7 sus4, played like that. And what Nile Rodgers tends to do is he frets these big kind of bar chord shapes, but he's often just emphasizing the higher notes in each of these shapes. So we've got the A7 sus4, just playing the top strings really. And then going to this chord here, which I suppose is a kind of A13 sound. So frets 5, 7, 5, 6, 7, and 5. Perhaps you want to work on your bending and your vibrato, in which case it makes sense to check out players who are known for those things. So you couldn't go too far wrong by looking at any of the great classic blues players, so B.B. King, Albert King, those kind of guys, or maybe some of the more melodic rock players. So someone like David Gilmour is great. So just learning one of his classic solos like Comfortably Numb would be a great way of working on both your bending and your vibrato. Something along those lines. I'm a little bit rusty on that particular solo, so I'm not sure some of the nuances were quite right there. But I hope you can see how much you could get out of studying a solo such as that one. It's kind of got everything in it, really. You've got lovely vibrato, you've got half-step bends, you've got whole-step bends, you've got adding vibrato to bends, and all kinds of nice little bending and vibrato nuances. So it'd be a fantastic solo to work on if you want to improve those particular techniques. Maybe you're in the fairly early stages of trying to get your acoustic finger picking technique together. Now I'm assuming that you've all watched my amazing video on basic fingerstyle patterns. If you have done that, then the best thing you can do is just to learn a whole load of easy fingerstyle songs. Loads of options here. I think one of my favourites is the Bob Dylan song Girl from the North Country, which is a beautiful song, but also a really good fingerstyle workout that's not too hard to play. So this one's in the key of G major or E minor. I've got a capo on at the 3rd fret, and it's starting off with this beautiful chord, which is kind of an E minor 7, an E minor 9. So I'm fretting the 4th fret on the 4th string and the 3rd fret on the 2nd string. I've got the open 3rd string and the open bottom string. I'm just setting up that basic fingerstyle pattern. So you've got the alternating thumb, you've got that pinch on beat 2. We're going down to this chord here. It's a D7 with an F sharp in the bass. I'm sort of ignoring the capo here, but that's the shape we're dealing with here, just playing that 2nd fret note with the thumb over the top of the neck, and then going to a G, and then doing this very common fingerstyle move where you're kind of putting down these, you've got the G chord and then you're putting down these 2 fingers here, 2nd fret on the 4th string, 1st fret on the 2nd string. Alternating bass with the thumb throughout, and then we've got some a variety of different patterns that you're kind of putting together to play the entire song. So those chords are just repeated for the verse of the song. That's kind of 80 or 90% of the song. There are a few other little bits in there, but that's the bulk of the tune. You might want to improve your tremolo picking. Now, I've done a full video on the specifics of this particular technique, but once you've got the basics together, learn some tunes. And those of you who know me can probably predict what I'm going to say next, but I would suggest looking at something like Mizzaloo by Dick Dale, that classic surf tune, which is a amazing tremolo picking workout. This one's an amazing tune, very hard to play it exactly like the record. It's played very fast. There are lots of kind of unusual nuances in there. I'm not sure I'm playing it exactly like the record, but I have attempted to do so. I've actually done a full video on this tune. But the thing with tremolo picking for me is just to stay super relaxed and not to have too much movement of the pick, just using the tip of the pick as well. Otherwise you tend to get tangled in the rest of the strings. And this one's just so much fun to play. It's just, the main riff is just played on the low E string. It's played with this exotic kind of Arabic sounding scale. And you can practice that riff on the low E string. You can also play it on the top string as well. Really fun one to work on. If you're more of an intermediate or advanced player, perhaps you might like to work on playing over chord changes and doing so in a fluent and melodic way. It's actually a very difficult thing to do on the guitar. So to work on that skill, maybe study some of the greats, maybe learn some classic jazz solos, maybe some Wes Montgomery, perhaps some Django Reinhardt. One of my favourite tunes to work on is the track Minor Swing by Django Reinhardt, which is just chock full of great stuff, and it's amazing the way that he kind of effortlessly plays over the changes and describes the chords in a really creative kind of a way. I can't remember the whole thing off the top of my head right now, but I might have to brush up on that. Maybe I can do a full Django Reinhardt lesson at some point in the future. But just in the first few bars there of his first solo, there's so much good stuff. I love the way he's describing the chord changes in a very clear kind of a way. The harmony on this one is actually quite simple. It's just a minor blues kind of thing in A minor. Signalling the change to the 4 chord there. Change to the 5 chord there, and then back to the 1 chord there. You can really hear those changes even if you haven't got the rhythm guitar going on underneath. So a really great example of how by learning a classic tune, not only are you going to be able to play this fantastic piece of music, but you're also learning all of this other stuff as well. So you've got chord vocabulary, you've got arpeggios, you've got scales, you've got harmony, theory, technique. It's really all in there. So that's it for this video. I want to wish you all the best with your guitar playing in 2024. And I am, of course, going to be here every week with a new video. I've got lots of exciting stuff planned and coming up. So I hope you join me for a few of those videos. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.